You know, the beautiful thing about the rational mind is it's quite useful in all of our life. It's something that has actually been trained in many of us in order to go through a life that is useful, practical, necessary. The rational mind has been a wonderful thing for almost all of us. Yet it's not meant to be the master. In response to that song, there's probably a part of your rational mind that says, I'm not light. I'm a body. Yet the indication of what science teaches us is that we are all indeed from one source, light. The indication would be that that light comes from a sun, which probably came from a central source, probably came from something known as a singularity that burst into the Big Bang and actually moved in such a manner that it has expressed you, a body. And you are indeed a body of light. Science teaches us, science indeed truly shows us, that we are light. What a peculiar thing that actually the scriptures make an implication and an indication to exactly that as well. You are light. One of the most beautiful things about the unity movement for me is a recognition that science is not in opposition to religion. As a matter of fact, what seems to be truly the indication is that what is proven in science is quite proven in religion. What is proven in religion is also quite proven in science. It's almost as if there is a unity of two things, a joining, if you will. There is a man who is a renowned chemist. There's a rumor that he's a master. He has a master's in chemistry, but the truth of it is that he didn't go for his master's. He found other things that were much more interesting for him in his life. Perhaps you too have heard of him. His name is Pope Francis, and he said, if one has the answers to all the questions, that is the proof that God is not with him. You must leave room for the Lord, not for our certainties. We must be humble. Another beautiful thing about unity is that whenever I see that word Lord, I replace it with the word love, which is very likely what the scriptures had in mind or intended in the first place. You must leave room for the love, not for certainty. We must be humble. Most of us have had an experience in our lives of someone who might have harmed us or caused difficulty, and we might have a prejudice against them. We might have something that we have decided that this is someone with whom I can no longer trust, with whom I can no longer have relationship, or whatever the case. But what's more important for me to recognize is that I have to leave room for love. Does that mean that I lie in the street and let people run over me? Absolutely not. What it does mean is that I find a way in order to be in relationship, no matter what the situation, no matter what the circumstance. I must leave room for love, for the transforming power of love and how it can bring two opposing things into union. As I said, the rational mind has served many of us. And that rational mind has proven to us on more than one occasion You're not light. You can't let people take advantage of you. Yet there is, between those two opposing views, a third view. A recognition that God is supporting us, that the universe itself is moving to our highest and best, that indeed each of us can come from a place of recognizing the love that we already are. One of the ways that I can do that, the way that we can most often do that, is by being willing to live in the question rather than our certainty. This morning, I'd like to invite all of us to recognize that no matter what situation we may be living in our lives where there seems to be an opposing view, there is oftentimes a third perspective. And the manner in which we can open up to that third perspective is by living in the question, by asking sufficient questions and being open to what could possibly happen. There was an anthropologist from the 20th century, so very long ago, by the name of Claude Lévi-Strauss, who once said that the wise man doesn't give the right answers, he poses the right questions. Are we willing to live in the question today, rather than discovering and standing firmly in the right answers? There are many opposing views and many opposing ways that we can see and recognize in our world, or for that matter, even in our lives. Today is February the 18th, which is not a really important day for most of us. However, it is a very significant day for me. On February the 18th of 1986, I recognized and fully surrendered to the fact that I had a really big problem in my life. My father had a problem with alcohol and died of alcoholism, amongst other things. And what I recognized most significantly on February the 18th of 1986 was that I was indeed powerless over alcohol. Now, before I put out any incorrect information, my sobriety date is March the 18th of 1986. But February the 18th was a month before, and it was the time when I started recognizing that that powerlessness was taking its toll in my life. And that toll was something that I could no longer bear, nor intended to suffer anymore. So with all the will that I had within me, with all the intention and muster that I had within me, I decided I was no longer going to drink. I was no longer going to do drugs. And as I said, my sobriety date was March the 18th. With all the muster of my ego and all the fortitude that I have within the small me, I decided I would take charge of things. Because there was only one way to do it. It was not until I surrendered to the possibility that it was necessary for something greater than just the small me did I truly get sober. More importantly, did I truly get sober and stay sober? I got sober a lot. Every few minutes I'd get sober. Why did I do that? I should stop. Yeah, well. Then I'd get sober again. The most important part was deciding to get sober and stay sober. But the significant part of that, the reason why I'm bringing up this morning is because I asked a question. It's because I was willing to live in a question. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the textbook of the manner in which I have used the 12 steps in order to have a spiritual awakening, asks this. We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? Now, reading this on a superficial level, it's quite easy to, oh yeah, God exists. Oh yeah, God. We're all for God. My tribe, all of us, we go for God. But does God have an activity and an energy in our lives? Does it make a difference in us and through us? That's where we actually get God in our heart, not just simply in our mind. It's a wonderful thing to think it through. It's a wonderful thing to feel it through. It's a glorious thing when we ask ourselves the question of how do I make this incredible 18-inch journey from my head into my heart? So, as we all know, Alcoholics Anonymous is a 20th century phenomenon. It's actually the largest spiritual movement in the entire world. It has affected more people than any other spiritual movement in our modern times. So this is very cutting-edge stuff. This whole head and heart thing. This whole idea of having a God in our lives that actually works. No, it's not cutting-edge stuff. It's been around for centuries. There's a guy who lived in what is currently known as Jerusalem. His name was James. He wrote a letter to a number of friends of his about the things that he was going through and the things that he saw his friends going through. And he offered them a solution. Cleanse your heart, because your mind is split down the middle. Your love for God on one side and selfish pursuits on the other. We can love God with all of our head. We can love God with all of our heart. But until we no longer decide to split ourselves down the middle, do we actually have a transformative experience in our lives? And I, for one, have had some interesting experiences in discovering what's a selfish pursuit. Do we indeed truly know what is not a selfish pursuit and what is? It's another reason why I want to invite myself and invite you into the ongoing question. This idea amongst the early Christians was something that they found significant, specifically with James. This comes from the 4th chapter of the Epistle of James, the 8th verse. But that must be when it was new. That's when it had a transformative aspect. Well, no. There's another thing that's known as the Psalms, which says, "Create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me." This is the question that we can live in our lives. The Hebrew people had an answer that is practical and applicable to us today. To live in the question. This is a significant verse for me because I happened across it a couple of years ago when my doctors said to me, "You have a blockage in your heart that most people find out about when they die." I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Perhaps I need to look at some things. Perhaps I need to ask myself some questions about what's expressing in my body as a result of my consciousness. To which I started recognizing it's important for me to create a pure heart and allow and accept God to create that and to renew a steadfast spirit within me. What question is applicable to your life today? In what way can you be willing to live in the mystery and no longer live in the certainty? In what way can you allow God to bring you into a softness and a suppleness and a gentleness that is more effective in your life? There is a modern poet by the name of Rainer Maria Rilke, who once asked the question, be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, like books that are now written in a very foreign tongue. Many of us, perhaps, have seen books that were written in a foreign tongue and decided, well, I don't understand that, so I'm not going to waste my time with it. I'll invite us instead to consider the possibility of, is there a foreign tongue that I can understand, translate? Am I speaking to myself in a foreign tongue? Is there a possibility that there is something more and greater acting in me, in my heart? Many of us in this last week have had our hearts broken. It's happened again. We watch the news, and some of us have come to the point of recognizing, well, here's another mass shooting. What are we going to do? Good question. What are we going to do? Have you felt the sensation of how much your heart can break in this situation? Have you stopped to truly recognize what we are indeed living in? My question this morning in regard to living in the question is, what are we going to do? I would invite all of us to no longer live from the place of error, live from the place of certainty, of one opinion as opposed to another opinion. Because that opposition can go on forever and ever. But with those two opposing opinions, is there a third perspective? Is there a third view? Our culture has created a situation of us versus them. And the accusations have flown from one side to the other side. And until we come to an understanding of no longer seeing the opposing side as the opposition, we will continue this ongoing cycle. This ongoing opposing cycle that gets us to the point of where our hearts are hardened to the extent of saying, well, there's another one. What are you going to do? I believe that there is a third way. That there is a way that we can truly see how, indeed, yes, you are right, and they are too. I don't know what side you're on, but no matter what side you're on, there's only one side. We're all in this together. And although we may disagree, even the disagreement may spring forth from a possibility that is unexpected. I would invite all of us to truly go within, to go within our heart, to take that journey from our head, which is right. Yes, your rational mind is right. But make that journey from here to here. As we make that journey, we recognize that we can come into a place of agreement, that we can live in a world of agreement. We can all agree that young people should not live in terror. We can all agree that young people should not be at their mortal peril for going about their day, no matter whom they might be. We all come from one source. You are indeed light. And it's important for each of us to come to a place of understanding and agreement. There's a man who has had a significant influence in my life, and also a significant influence in many people's lives, who has a lot to say about agreement. His name is Don Miguel Ruiz, and he says that don't make assumptions. How many assumptions are you making about the opposing sides in this world? How many assumptions are each of us making about, oh, here we go again with this? Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. Can we make a decision to not make assumptions? To truly see someone in their light and in their love? Can we see that there is more than just opposing views? There's another possibility that's waiting to express itself in our lives. Might we make a decision today to live in the question, to center into our hearts, and to no longer live completely from our heads? Yes, it's a wonderful tool. It has been very effective at bringing all of us to where we are now. It is a beautiful tool, and it is not intended to be the master. The master is that place in between. So when we see an opposing view, may we instead ask a question. May we instead not make assumptions about how they are wrong and I am right. May we occasionally consider the possibility that we can't make the assumption I am wrong and they're right. May we live in the infinite possibility of peace in our world. May we know that we can and do harmonize with love. There's a spiritual pathway which claims to be and is a non-dual teaching that's had an immense influence in my life. It's known as A Course in Miracles, which states spirit has no levels, and all conflict arises from the concept of levels. Only the levels of the Trinity are capable of unity. When I first read that, I thought, what does that mean? And when I happened across it yesterday, I recognized that's why it had such an impact on me. And I didn't really quite know what it was meaning. When I recognized that the Trinity of what seems to be an opposing view, there is another, indeed, more important view. When I see that there is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in my life, it makes a difference in recognizing the unity of who I am. When I know myself to be mind, body, and spirit, I can truly move into an expression of unity. When I see myself as a thinking being or see myself as a feeling being, there's a third possibility. May we, in this moment, in this day, step into the Trinity that is capable of unity. May we make a difference in our lives, and more importantly, may we make a difference in our world.